Hey everyone, someone asked me recently how Bitcoin could be used to help Christian missionaries in foreign countries. The answer is yes, Bitcoin is fantastically well suited for doing exactly that. And I'll explain exactly how that works, and I will explain the pitfalls you need to be aware of to avoid, et cetera, et cetera. So, one, Bitcoin is intended to be a medium that enables you to transmit value anywhere in the world, anytime, in a way that nobody can stop. And it does that extraordinarily well. So now and then, Christian missionaries find themselves in countries where it is difficult to receive funding for their work. This reminds me in the old days of people bringing Bibles into behind the Iron Curtain, where in communist Russia, where Bibles were not allowed. And the question is, well, how do you get funds to those people to distribute Bibles in a foreign country like communist Russia, etc.? Well, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to identify any specific countries. I'll just say country X. And country X can mean whichever country it is that you need to get funds to a Christian missionary. So, can Bitcoin be used to transmit value in the form of money to Christian missionaries in country X, regardless of where that is, anywhere in the world? The answer is yes, and it works fantastically well for that purpose. And here are the considerations. So one, Bitcoin is pseudonymous, but not anonymous, meaning on the Bitcoin blockchain, it is nothing but a series of numbers. And when you transmit value on the Bitcoin blockchain, it just shows that one number transmitted a certain amount of value to another number. 0.1 Bitcoin or 0.01 Bitcoin went from this number to that number. Now, the thing you need to know is those numbers are only anonymous to the degree that somebody does not get a court order to find out who owns that number. So, for example, if you are transmitting, if I go into my Coinbase account and I transmit $1,000 to a missionary in country X, nobody will know who transmitted that $1,000 unless somebody goes and gets a court order to Coinbase to require them by court order to identify who was the sender of those funds from Coinbase. If somebody does that, consistent with the expectation that I could have been doing something illegal, or that there was probable cause to believe that something illegal was being done, or whatever it is to justify a court order, and I'm honestly not sure exactly what is required for a court order, but if somebody gets a court order, Coinbase will comply with that court order, and they will identify the sender, at which point I am no longer anonymous. Now, that is not something the average person could ever figure out. It is really something that only law enforcement can figure out. So, on the sending side, if you are an American citizen, the number one rule is don't do anything illegal. Obviously, I would never advocate anybody does anything illegal. But if for some reason it is illegal to send money to a Christian missionary in country X, then there is some, liability associated with doing that. Now, I am not aware that it is illegal to send money to Christian missionaries in country X, but I don't know. I don't know countries like North Korea or Iran. I don't know if it's illegal or not illegal to send funds to Christian missionaries that are doing their thing in those countries. I just don't know. But you'd have to look that up on the internet or find out. So we'll assume in country X that it is not illegal to send Christian missionaries funds. So if it is not illegal, then Bitcoin works fantastically well for that. If it is illegal, you should not do it because somebody's going to identify that funds were sent to country X, and law enforcement in the United States is going to say you're not allowed to send funds to country X, and therefore somebody's going to come knock on your door. Now, normally large cryptocurrency exchanges like Coinbase will not allow you to send funds to sanctioned entities. So, for example, if there is a cryptocurrency exchange in North Korea that is associated with the state-sponsored, terrorism and hacking or whatever, and you try to send funds to that Bitcoin address, somewhere like Coinbase is going to say, hey, we don't send to that address. Now, that doesn't mean you can't send them, funds some other way, which of course I would never do and never advocate, but somewhere like Coinbase typically includes a blacklist of places they will not allow you to send funds because it violates U.S. law. That being said, that list almost certainly would not include Christian missionaries in foreign countries if those Christian missionaries are using, something like BitKey, like a self-custodial wallet where they generate their own address. Now, if they're using a centralized exchange, obviously that would potentially be blacklisted. But again, the number one rule is don't do anything that violates the law. Okay, so that covers on the U.S. side. So the rules to recap on the U.S. side is don't do anything illegal. Don't send money, cryptocurrency value to some country where the U.S. Does not allow you to send it, period, no matter what, end of story. So let's assume that base is covered, and let's assume you are sending money to a Christian missionary in country X, and that is perfectly legal under U.S. law. Okay, now the consideration on the other side is the same as in the U.S., which is in the other country, by default, nobody will know who you are sending those funds to, except at some point that Christian missionary is likely to want to convert some of that Bitcoin into the local currency. And in order to do that, they will likely need to use some sort of money transmitter or exchange service or cryptocurrency exchange or something that is in country X. And the same rules apply in country X, is when you send that Bitcoin, whether you send it to a self-custody solution like BitKey, which, nobody in the world can stop. If you send it from your BitKey to their BitKey, literally nobody in the world can stop you from doing that. Not the U.S. government and not country X. But again, don't ever do anything illegal. But my point is, on the receiving end, if they take their BitKey device or their, Bitcoin wallet on their smartphone or whatever it is, and they go to a money transmitter or a cryptocurrency exchange or somebody to convert that Bitcoin into the local currency, that person or that exchange or that service or that cryptocurrency bank or whatever it is will know who they are, because they will have to have a license in country X to deal with local currency. So if they go to country X and they exchange the Bitcoin for local currency, somebody is going to know who made that transaction. And the law enforcement in that country is going to be able to knock on the door of that cryptocurrency exchange and say, hey, we saw that somebody transmitted you $1,000, and it, to the best of our forensic analysis, it came from a Coinbase account in the United States. And we know that's not illegal in the United States, but we have a problem with whatever, the Christian missionary might be doing here in country X. And therefore, we want to know who is doing that. And the cryptocurrency exchange, typically in the foreign country, would comply with law enforcement, and they would provide the name of who is connected to the account that converted that $1,000 of Bitcoin to the local currency. So as a result of that, you just have to sort of understand that even though Bitcoin is as anonymous as a, Swiss numbered bank account, while it is in transit, it is not anonymous as a Swiss numbered bank account on the receiving end or sending end when it is converted to a local currency. So when you convert US dollars to Bitcoin on Coinbase, they know who you are. When a person in country X converts that Bitcoin to the local currency, whoever facilitated that transaction took the Bitcoin and gave them the local currency. Whoever did that knows who the Christian missionary is. So if it's not illegal to do that, then you don't have to worry about it. And everybody's happy, everybody's kosher, and Bitcoin works literally like magic for that consideration. If it is illegal on either end, meaning it is illegal to send value from the United States to country X, then you have a problem if you do it because it's illegal. And if it is illegal to receive funds in country X from the United States, you also have a problem. Now, I don't think, even with like sanctions and blacklists and OFAC, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Controls, even with all of that, I'm not aware of any sort of country X's out there that prohibit the receiving of value. There's lots of prohibitions on the sending of value. For example, I don't think you can just like randomly wire money to North Korea. That, to the best of my knowledge, is illegal. But I don't think there's anything in North Korea that says you're not allowed to get money from, so if you were a Christian missionary in North Korea, and if the United States did not have a prohibition against sending funds to private citizens in North Korea, then I can't imagine that North Korea would have a prohibition against receiving funds. Generally, countries are very happy to receive value, receive currency, receive Bitcoin. Like, they would much rather their citizens have that value as opposed to wherever it came from. So normally, whatever country X is more than happy to receive US dollars or Bitcoin or any sort of cryptocurrency or any sort of foreign currency. Normally, they are thrilled to have that money show up in their economy, and there's never any prohibition against it. Again, unless, for example, the case of, back during the Iron Curtain and the, importation of Bibles in communist Russia, because distribution of Bibles was illegal, if somebody suspected that funds were being used to distribute Bibles, they would go, if cryptocurrency exchanges had existed back then, they would go to the cryptocurrency exchange and say, hey, this $1,000 that came from the United States, we suspect it is being used to distribute Bibles. We want to know who is it that converted that $1,000 from Bitcoin into whatever the Russian ruble or whatever it is, whatever the, Russian currency is. So anyway, for all those reasons, you just need to be aware of the fact that it is possible with a court order from law enforcement to figure out who the sender is and who the receiver is. In the United States as well as country X, wherever you're sending the money. And as long as you're aware of that, and as long as it's not illegal, and most of the time it would not be. I'm not aware in most situations that it would be illegal as long as you're sending funds to a private citizen, such as a Christian missionary, and not to a, state sponsor of terrorism. But again, I don't know the rules. So look up the rules, find out, and get professional advice before you do that, because I don't know what the rules are. I just know it is literally as simple as you send them Bitcoin, they take it to a money changer or a cryptocurrency exchange or, something like that, and they swap it for the local currency, and boom, it's even, you've effectively accomplished the same thing as somebody bundling up a bunch of US dollars in a suitcase. And of course, the limit is 10,000. You're not allowed to bring more than 10,000 US dollars across the border without declaring it. And if you declare it, then, I don't know what happens to it. I'm not sure, but the signs always say you may not bring $10,000 across the border without declaring it and filling out extra customs forms and all this sort of stuff. And I'm not sure what happens to your money if you have more than 10,000, but, it's the equivalent of Bitcoin can be used to do the equivalent of, bundling up less than $10,000 in a suitcase, flying to country X, handing the money to a Christian missionary, and letting them convert those US dollars into the local currency. Now, in that case, you could also find out who did that currency exchange, except it's harder because it's not electronic. It probably happens, in some little shop somewhere. Nobody's asking for identification. There's no driver's licenses. There's no ID cards. There's no, AML, KYC, which is anti-money laundering, know your customer laws. So anyway, it's a lot more likely that a US dollar transaction remain anonymous, because people who are exchanging money, even at an airport, if you walk into an airport with one currency and you go exchange it for another currency in an airport, to my knowledge at least, they don't ask for identification. They might, I can't remember. Or if you try to do it for a bunch of money, maybe they'd ask. But generally, US dollars are more anonymous, but obviously very difficult to get from point A to point B, because if you can't wire money, it's very difficult to get money from point A to point B unless somebody literally flies there with less than $10,000 in a suitcase. And Bitcoin fixes all of that as long as you're aware of the potential concerns related to the fact that it is not completely anonymous on either end if you have a court order. So hopefully that's helpful, but Bitcoin is a ingenious technology for Christian missions. The ability to transmit value anywhere in the world in a way that no government can stop is a hugely empowering force for Christian missions. And as long as you're aware of the pitfalls and you are careful not to violate any laws in the process, it is an incredible technology for transmitting value and advancing the Word of God and the gospel anywhere around the world. And it's an amazing tool for that. So hope this video helps on all fronts for anybody in that situation who is looking to support Christian missionaries in locations where it's not as easy as just wire transferring them money. Thanks, everyone.